Thank you. Thank you, Jared. Next, I want to introduce the topic for today, creating a fluid mobile commerce experience. I just want to go through a couple of logistics before we bring the panel. The first is we want to use Slido.com to ask all of the questions because we found that this works really well. Because we record the events, it saves the moderator from having to repeat the question, and it's less disruptive for the panelists and the audience. So no oral questions, please. If you could go to Slido.com, put in the event code, and type in your question, that would be fabulous. And this also gives us the opportunity to like each other's questions, so the moderator can pick from questions that are more popular and that are more top of mind for a number of people rather than one person. Without further ado, I'd like to bring on the panel. So to moderate, we have Dale Traxler from RightPoint.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dale Traxler. I'm Vice President of Commerce Solutions for RightPoint. We're a customer experience agency with technology at our core. I spend my time helping companies develop content and commerce, mobile, and innovation solutions to drive commerce across their organizations through their multi-channel networks, whether they're physical stores, whether they're all virtual. We're out there to try and help them optimize their performance. Thrilled to have this opportunity to talk to you tonight. My background, I was a co-founder of a pure play online jewelry distribution company before I joined RightPoint. I grew that and sold it in 2012 and got back into the consulting world where I can use my practitioner knowledge to help companies like yourselves be more successful. I also am a mentor for a startup accelerator in Boulder called Boomtown, which just opened up a new facility here in Atlanta, so they're expanding. And in my spare time, I get to write for practicalecommerce.com, which is not very often because I don't have much spare time anymore because you all are driving our business to grow too fast. So I blame it all on you. I'd like to introduce the rest of the panel today. Craig Ellis. Bear with me, I'm going to read these. Craig is a partner executive in Global Black Belt. I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds impressive, for mobile app innovation and the intelligent cloud at Microsoft. As a senior digital transformation leader, he has over 20 years experience and is a subject matter expert on mobility, IoT, conversational interfaces, design, user retention, and harvesting emerging technologies. He's also an Apple Ninja Master, black belt, and Ninja, so look out. And the founder of Go Mobile Masters, which has launched numerous apps in the partnership with subject matter experts in a range of industries. Prior to that, he was with Deloitte Digital and American Express. Craig, welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ernie Boudet, is that correct? Ernie's the Vice President of Product Strategy for FIS, which is a leading international provider of financial services, technology, and outsourcing solutions. His 20-year background as a leader in marketing communications has been highlighted by proven success premiering, promoting, and protecting business and consumer brands by driving increased visibility and market value. His expertise also includes change management, corporate reputation management, social responsibility, brand positioning, and messaging, as well as customer and employee engagement. Prior to FIS, his experience included roles with WorldPay and Intuit. Michael Bannon is the head of technology, product management, e-commerce, analytics, and innovation for HD Supply. That's a lot of stuff. One of North America's largest industrial distributors, HD Supply offers a broad range of products and value-add services to about 500,000 B2B customers. His background building and leading hyper-performing product and technology organizations for Fortune 500s and explosive growth startups includes deep experience crafting and executing multi-generation business and technology plans and driving agile and digital transformations. And finally, Raghu Raja is the Vice President of Engineering, Data, and AI for NCR. In his current role, he oversees NCR's cloud line of business and engineering and product management of NCR's digital banking business. He is also the head of their innovation lab, where he works on computer vision and natural language processing using deep learning, and oversees NCR's data engineering practice. That focuses around AI, machine learning, and deep learning. So, Raghu, welcome. So we're going to try and keep this lively and fun. Hopefully, we'll be able to address the topic at hand, which is about creating a fluid mobile commerce experience. At RightPoint, we believe that the world has moved on beyond omni-channel thinking to really create something that's a much more frictionless, predictive, and contextual experience. So we're going to talk about really four topics tonight that pertain to that. One, what are the customer expectations for mobile commerce today? What's driving that? About 60% of revenue today online is coming through mobile apps. That's an incredibly ridiculous number, and we're going to explore why that is. Second area of focus is what technology and infrastructure is necessary to enable that customer experience. Where should you be making investments? The third area we're going to explore is what are the challenges to both implementing that technology or those technologies, as well as creating that customer experience that the customer is looking for. And finally, with time remaining, we'll look at what's out in the future. What should you be thinking about right now if you want to be an innovator and be a leader, out 3 to 4 to 5 years? And that's a big guess, but it's worth exploring that. And then we'll have the Q&A at the end. So please feel free to enter questions. That'll keep the thing relevant to what you all are looking for at the end, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I think I'll just start on my left here. Raghu, what do you think the key customer expectations are for mobile commerce today?
So I think the primary drivers, in my opinion, are friction-free retail experience, right? And I think, what do I mean by that? It's just how easy it is to do what you're trying to do, right? I mean, I do banking today, but same with the broader commerce as well, is that you try to make the experience of getting your interaction very friction-free, and that kind of mobile kind of plays into that very heavily, and that's sort of, in my mind, the critical thing that drives the mobile growth, I would say. Yeah.
Very good.
Can I add to that? Yes. No, please.
We have a disruptor already.
Sorry, I'm a New Yorker. We're used to that. When you look at mobile, there's different screen real estate. So whether it's a notebook, a mobile device, or a smart watch, when you look at it from a user interface perspective, you have to look at the session time, right? The session time when someone's on their laptop is going to be very long. You're going to be doing research on the phone. It's going to be very task specific. And on a watch, if you're a developer, the user interface is called a glance, right? So what it really means is you really can't develop a user experience and deploy everywhere. You really need to optimize to the experience based upon the session time of that device. And what that really means is having the relative personable and actionable information on the device at all times, especially within a watch or a mobile app, because that session time, typically you're only going to get anywhere between 10 to 20 seconds. All right, we've all been there. It's very quick and simple. So I think that's really important about the experience.
Hi, Michael Bannon from HD Supply. I think, so I come from a B2B perspective rather than a B2C perspective. And I think of mobile is like carpal tunnel syndrome. So you have the site of the pain, which might be your wrist, and then you have the source, which might be a shoulder impingement. So at the end of the day, you want people to buy things, but there's all kinds of other stuff that drives them to remember that you even exist. So things like order status, whatever the particular space is. So I bet if we were to take almost every e-commerce app, strip the brands off of them, strip the UI out of them, they basically all do the same thing. And lots of times it's because of a lack of very deep thinking about, we'll use the term customer journey, and just the very specific things that will drive people to not forget that you exist?
You know, from our perspective, where we start is the consumer is the point of sale, because increasingly they're carrying it in their hands, right? For those of you guys that are bored with the panel already, you've probably broken out your phones, you've done some shopping, you're going to pick something up on the way home. It might even be food now, right? You know, order ahead, pay ahead, go through the drive-through. But from that perspective, it starts. And, you know, I agree from the customer journey. And mobile is increasingly a key component of that. You know, from a consumer expectation standpoint that we study very closely, what we see is it's really three key tenets that they're expecting. It has to be instant, it has to be intelligent, and it has to be secure. And what we're finding is that the tenets that are enabling that, which I think you guys have touched on, is it starts with data. It's data-driven, right? You know, I was at a conference recently where an executive from U.S. Bank had a really compelling perspective. He said the greatest product, the greatest retention product that we have is the information on our customers, and increasingly they're expecting us to use that wisely and responsibly to improve their customer experience. So it was even less about the products and services, it was more about the information. And so what we see with a little bit of this circle, it's data-driven, it's connected communications. And what I mean by connected communications is, you know, if I start by a search, if I interact with a bot and I share information, if you're capturing geo information on me, and if I ultimately land with a customer service representative, do not make me start over. That's right. Right? And then what that feeds to is the third tenet, again, data-driven, connected communications. The next is cultivating loyalty, and it's cultivating loyalty at every touch point along the journey. That is then or completing the circle where it's digital first. And so one of the key things that I think we're all trying to solve for is this millennials, the first true digital generation, right? Some project that by the year 2020, north of 40% of all of U.S. spending power is going to be in the hands of this generation. And they don't know any different, right? You know, so it's this balance of what we're increasingly calling the now and next customer with those that maybe use more traditional channels. And so, you know, in a quick wrap-up, again, it's instant, it's intelligent and secure, it's data-driven, connected communications, cultivating loyalty, and digital first. And whatever you do, don't make me start over. If I've invested the time, you need to connect that experience for me.
And that's what we mean when we start to talk about frictionless. Which leads me to another question, and anybody that wants to field this, feel free. The next generation, after millennials, is becoming famous for using multiple devices at one time. So how does that experience translate to when I'm shopping? Is it on the desktop? Does it move to the phone? Does it get done on the watch? What are you guys' perspectives on those things?
If I could, let me start with a few statistics, and I'll pass it over. This millennials generation, 70%, in fact, a stat that I saw this morning is pushing more like 80% use mobile banking apps daily and demand instant P2P payments. 40%, now pushing 45%, don't want to carry cards or cash. 35%, now pushing 40%, don't want to fill in card numbers, usernames, or passwords. Nearly 60% prefer to interact with their loyalty programs on their mobile device, with 70% saying that the way they prefer to redeem loyalty points is at the point of sale, in the moment, contextual. And the last I'll leave with is another 2020 stat: one out of every $2 spent is one of every 2 e-com dollars spent by 2020 is expected to be by mobile device. So the momentum's there. It's coming, and you know, we think, you know, our society really is mobile driven. So if you're not adapting to that, the risk is just becoming irrelevant.
Right.
So I think great points actually, but And I was trying to think about your question around how does that, going from one device to another device, how critical it is. And, we used to, I used to work for a company called S1 many years ago. We sort of, for all practical purposes, invented multi-channel solutions. And this used to be a big talk of town at the time, right? Can I start an operation on one device, go to another device, and from there finish it on a third device? The reality is that today, consumers don't have the time and the patience to go from one device to another device. They want to be able to start the operation and they want to complete the operation friction-free in 3 clicks. If you can't do that, if you can't let me open an account in 3 clicks, if I can't send you money in 2 minutes, nobody's interested in it. They abandon it, they walk away, right? So I think where all these multi-devices come into play, the omni-channel devices come into play, in my mind, is connected experiences, really, right? So if you think about, Alexa and say, hey, Alexa, I want you to transfer $100 to this account, and Alexa says, oh, I just sent you a authentication to your phone. Can you just authenticate it yourself against the phone? You walk into a bank. The bank has beacons all around. You walk in there, and you know that that you are there, and all your data is automatically authenticated and shared. You walk into a car dealership and you're there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes or more. Your bank already knows that you are there and you probably are buying a car. Maybe you should pre-authorize you for a car, push your authentication to your mobile. And I think if you look at it in all of those experiences, mobile is the center, right? So mobile is like the proxy for the person interacting with the devices around you. So I think that interaction between mobile and the devices around the environment that you are in is really where the connected experience will take a bigger shape. And I think if you all have looked at CarPlay, the recent CarPlay, they're trying to kind of get the car to work with your mobile so that you can kind of interplay between those two things. So I think that's really the theme that is evolving in the connected experience space.
I have a 20-second contrarian view. So I don't remember what the stats were, but there's like 60%, 50%, 70%. If you look at the EBITDA of most companies, they can't afford to forget the 30 and the 40 and the 50. And I think that's the biggest challenge as we look at new technology. How do you serve people that don't know how to use their DVD player? But if you lose them, then you're no longer profitable. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges as we look to wireless almost anything. And I think the personal heresy is that voice is one of the things that overcomes that, because almost everybody knows how to say things. Yeah. Not everybody knows how to use a mobile device.
Clearly, just to kind of wrap on the customer expectation, I think the missing link you just touched on is voice. I think that's going to be the thing that takes off just absolutely massively for not just ordering, like is kind of where it is today, but for browsing and for shopping and having virtual assistants do research. So we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. And Craig, maybe you can kick this one off.
Okay.
What kind of technologies are behind all this? We just talked about all kinds of different things, multiple devices, watches, IoT, instantaneous credit applications and approvals and all those kinds of things. What's going on in the background that people need to be thinking about?
Yeah, when you hear the term omni-channel, and you hear it a lot nowadays, but really what it means is from an architectural sense as well as how you're going to start to continue investing in your IT assets. It's really about consolidation of your data estate, right? Because historically, you see a lot of these different avenues within the omni-channel are typically managed by different BUs within an organization. And with that, they tend to have their own ways how they have analytics, their own way how they're collecting data, whether it's copies of the truth or they actually have like their own client base. And I've been on the other side, and I could tell you it's extremely common with the Fortune 10 to the Fortune 2000. So I think the biggest challenge is unifying your data, consolidating that data into one data estate. And we all talked about we talked about frictionless, we talked about personable, actionable data, which has been going on for such a long time. It's really come down to AI, right? And AI, you're hearing a lot about that today, but really AI has been going on for such a long time, where if you're in the retail business, you're creating a customer profile, and from that profile, you're looking at what sort of actions you're taking, so you're going to come up with various suggestions. It's been happening for such a long time. Now it's going a lot more mainstream. So the first thing to get you there, to really optimize your business and optimize user experience, is collect all that data into one. So I heard is, and we've all been there, I speak to the call center, I mention my problem, they send me into the retail space, and I have to explain my problem all over again, right? And that's what I'm talking about, consolidating that data. So when you check into that retail organization, or it could be banking, or it could be insurance, whatever you want, right? They know who you are. You feel like you're getting a premium service. You don't have to repeat yourself, and someone is already there being able to work on the problem that you're looking to get solved.
If I could ask a question of Michael, kind of as a follow-up, being in B2B, you'll jump on this one. We have data, it's unified, there's a single source of truth. What about integrations? How do we pull this all together in real time to put together the experience that customer's looking for?
Hire really smart people. I mean, it's just, there's a phrase I use with my teams periodically. They'll say, oh, that's really hard. And I'll go, I know it's hard, that's why I hired you. If it was easy, I could hire dumb people. Like, these are just, and practically, if you look at, I mean, most companies, startups, Fortune 1000, doesn't matter, there's not a very clearly articulated strategy that drills down to a detailed level. Example is what customer data really matters. Like, you can't, it's very difficult to go from whatever state you're in, heterogeneous data spread all over the place, to this 360 view of the customer. So what data matters? Go put a bullet in that, solve that problem, leverage it, measure it, that worked, then go solve the other things. That's not true for everybody, but I think it's, a lot of these data problems are just so large, you can't solve them as a big thing. You have to understand what matters and then solve that first. And then the technical piece is just really, I picture it like it's a cruise ship, and there's the e-commerce guys like me, where the captain's shaking hands, then there's the guys in the engine room, bloody knuckles, fist fights. That's what integration is.
Yeah. Ernie, how about security and privacy concerns, as you get into financial data and tools and things like that?
Yeah, I think one of the debates that we've heard that we're working through with a lot of our clients is the distinction between data ownership and data use. Go to a few statistics that compel us. More than 50% of U.S. consumers, they were surveyed about middle of this year, said that they would be willing to share personal information for a better offer, for a better experience. I don't think that that's a black and white movement, but I do think it's a leading indicator in terms of if you demonstrate responsibility and you create a better experience, that I think their ultimate currency is time. What they're after, whether they're a small business owner or consumer, and I would argue that consumers are small business owners and vice versa, they want more time. They want more time to grow their business. They want more time to spend with their families. They want more time for those hobbies that they're not able to get to. So I think it's a responsible nature. The one guard is, again, I think we're in a bit of a gray area, and I think as long as it's demonstrated responsibility, I don't think you can make black and white decisions by simply saying we're not going to go there in terms of trying to deliver this user experience and ask consumers their permission to be able to do that. And what we find, unfortunately, with some organizations is they say that's too hard, that's too difficult, that's too many hurdles. Well, if you're not doing it, there are others that are demonstrating smart and responsible use of data. And so what I'd say briefly from sort of the infrastructure and other things in place, for us it's less about the technology and the infrastructure as things. It's actually how all that works together in an ecosystem. right, that delivers those types of experiences. Because if it's just about the feature functionality and it's not about the job or that ultimate outcome that you're solving for that customer, which maybe it's we're looking to save them time, we lose sight of the opportunity and I think some of the path that maybe is a contributor to overcomplicating things, because we're not in Terminator age anymore. I mean, the technology exists. My point about the Terminator reference is the technology exists. It's all in about how do you put it to work in the best interests. And we're seeing this perfect storm emerging of the emergence of new technologies, AI, machine learning, robotic process automation, these other things. We're seeing a growing comfort amongst consumers saying, as long as you demonstrate responsibility and deliver a better customer experience, I'm willing to share. And then it's about listening and being in tune. And sometimes what we're finding is it's not about what you tune up, it's what you tune out. Because you throw so many data points and so many offers and everything else, it's the boy that cried wolf. And that actually is going to have negative consequences. So we actually are finding that sometimes it's what volume knobs do you tune out to concentrate those relevant, personalized, predictive experiences through data that is ultimately going to drive that loyalty. It's that information piece again, right? What's the most loyal and sticky thing that financial services organizations and other businesses have? It's the information.
I think just want to add a couple of things to it, right? I mean, I think it's very well stated. I think a couple of data points. We tried a few months ago, we worked on a project with a very large bank, and thinking we were not going to be able to, we want to be able to access data to be able to do interesting things with it and see how we can kind of tailor the experience and make it better. We were very uncomfortable about doing it. So we went to them, and then from there to their customers, and then said, can we use your data to give better experience? And I was so surprised to see, they said, sure, go right ahead, right? As long as you are, the do no harm is really very critical. The second thing is don't spook the customer, right? Don't spook the consumer, right? Because I'll tell you, I ran I built a database startup before NCR, and one of the things that we figured was based on your spend behavior, I could tell you a lot of things about you, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, whether you contribute to certain types of charities, what type of religious beliefs that you have, whether you have kids, and whether you a lot of things about you just by your spending behavior. The flip side, so if you take that and you push that out, it just, in its raw form, it kind of spooks the customer, right, completely, right? A few years ago, 3-4 years ago, there was a argument around data mining that the Target was going through. They found that based on the buying behavior of this teenager, they found the teenager was pregnant, right? Before the family knew that the teenager was pregnant, right? So, and they sent out this, coupons for diapers or something like that to them. And she was, and the dad was livid, saying, why would you send this? And they called, and sure enough, they found out that she was really pregnant. And it's so the insights are really, data and insights are really powerful. But how do you use it is really, really important. GDPR and all the security stuff that we mentioned is all really valid. Customers are actually willing to give you access to it, realistically, if you provide the right level of contextual application for the data. Really.
Yeah. Well, we kind of drifted into privacy, but I think that was an important thing to talk about. It's on everybody's mind today. Continuing down our path, we want to explore a little bit of what are the challenges, and this just doesn't have to be technology. It can be, Michael, you and I were talking about, it's really the logistics behind it. As a company scaling, investing, trying to use mobile apps or technology to drive their business, what kind of challenges are they faced with that are preventing them from moving forward? Since I picked on you, why don't you go ahead and start, Michael?
I think one thing companies have to learn to be really good at is changing technologies. So whatever AI you implement today, there's going to be a Silicon Valley startup funded, and they're the better technology 3 years from now. So you just need to realize that it's like aging. Like at some point in time, you're going to lose some hair. Like that's just going to happen. So no, I don't. Okay, we're fine. But so I think, I mean, that's a core competency that you have to be good at. The other thing I would say in terms of selection, like as we think about, I think I'm a little bit off topic here, but as you think about what do we do internally, what do we buy or build, like there are a lot of really smart PhDs out of Stanford, Eastern Europe, et cetera, with tons of money. They don't care if they sleep working on hard AI, ML problems. If you're going to go into that, you need to realize the weaponization you're competing against. So I think that's.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't. 3 years is too long in AI. 3 months is probably more like it because the rate of change is phenomenally high. But I think to kind of bring it back a little bit, I love to talk about AI. AI is like my pet subject. But I would say bringing back a little bit on the mobile side. I think one of the areas probably is the unpacking of whatever technology that you have today. All of these ecosystems are starting to unpack your applications out, really, right? So I think playing in that space meaningfully is going to become very challenging, right? So what do I mean by unpacking? So you have your phone, your iPhone, and you have your Messages app. Now suddenly they want your full app to kind of participate in the Messages app so that you can interact with Apple Business Chat, for instance, right? So how do I plug into the Siri to be able to kind of talk to the customer about different things? How do I plug in widgets in front so that you can provide data before even your application gets launched? Or even if your application gets launched at all. So I think the real challenge is that if you pull up my application, my iPhone today, and I'm sure all of your phones today, there are probably 300 apps in there, right? Getting attention for your app to ever be launched in this year is going to be super, super challenging. I think the technology and the enablement and contextualization of the content that you have and how well you participate in this unpacked ecosystem is really what will determine whether you will be successful or not successful really in that space really. So I think that's probably a biggest challenge in my mind from a wireless technology, for a mobile technology point of view, yeah.
Just to add to that, from a non-technical perspective, right, I think, the main theme is really change management. And what I mean by that is you hear technology is evolving so quickly, and with technology tends to be social change, organizational change, where, there's some thought, the job that you have now most likely will not exist 5-10 years from now. So it's change management, it's always be learning. And what I see right now in today's world is really a couple of things. Now that enterprises or companies from all sorts of sizes are moving their IT infrastructure to the cloud. And the change management from IT folks is really, some folks, it's change, it's different, the job's going to evolve. It's not a point where they're going to be eliminated, but they need to think about it that their job, they're going to have more time to focus on their core competency. Instead of thinking about VMs and things like that, they should be really thinking about how can I come up with great applications and solutions to really enable my business and to delight customers. So I think that's one with change management. The other is, it is truly a global marketplace. So when you think about bots and you think about all these things, you're not just looking at a single marketplace, especially within mobile, you're contacting the world. So you need to start thinking about, a couple of things there. People just don't speak English, and that's the same in any part in the United States and worldwide. So when you think about your user interfaces, your bots, you need to be, it's an opportunity to deliver value, so you need to keep that in mind. And another trend I'm starting to see is what mobile applications, you hear Mobile Center of Excellence, now you're starting to see where they're creating mobile factories. And that is to come up with core components, whether it's services, whether it's UI, whether it's widgets, right? Because it's all about time to market. So I wouldn't call it a factory mindset, even though the name is there, but it's really starting to be responsive to the opportunities in the marketplace in a timely way.
Yeah, just a few adds. One magic term for us a lot, it's APIs. And increasingly, very smart APIs libraries that are enabling platforms and devices and others to communicate with each other in real time is something that I think is really really prominent and really important today. You touched on something, Michael, that I thought was good. Some of the decisions that we drive for from a speed to market perspective is, do we build it, do we buy it, or do we partner to go get it? I'll share with you guys, we're doing a lot of partnering. And the reason being is because in a lean agile mindset, we can do rapid painstorming. We can do rapid prototyping. We can do tests with that consumer consent, with those customer consents, to put experiences in front of them that they're going to give us real-time information of whether or not it's relevant for them. Because otherwise, what we're doing is we've got that inside-out mindset where we think we've got everything figured out, and the outside-in mindset is what matters. There have been several times that we have been so convinced that we knew exactly what the customers wanted, they saved our ass because it was completely off of what was most important to them and how they used the interoperability of these different channels and devices, and how one led to another, and what were the statistical preferences of engagement with a bot, with a self-service channel, and with others. What was very, very interesting is that voice was leading, because that was more natural, which I think was a statistic that you were talking about, to the broader base of customers. That was something that they were more comfortable with. So, I think the ability to create those experiments, those experience experiments in a rapid fashion, to be able to do that is really, really key. I think what it comes back to is context. It's contextual commerce that we're ultimately talking about here. And really no two consumers are the same when it comes to that. So, from our point of view, it really is all about the customer journey. It really is all about the role or the job that mobile has increasingly in that omni-channel experience. And how do you connect that in such a way where it's contextually relevant at that moment? Not spooky.
No, you're in my space now. That's what I tell people every single day. It's about context. It's about, not spooky personalization, but contextual things that drive that experience to help them make decisions at whatever point they're in their journey.
Yeah, what's relevant for me, right?
Exactly. And you need that persona work, you need that journey work in order to be able to ever get near that. And that's where a lot of companies fail, by the way. They jump right in and say, my sales guy's a proxy, it's all going to work. The sales guy doesn't have a clue. And you need to actually do the voice of the customer, work to get there.
And one final consideration, because you talked about the number of apps, 300 on some phones. I'll be bold here, guys. We are way beyond app fatigue. And the introduction of every new app, frankly, is just a contribution to the noise. And I shared a perspective earlier about arguably what might be more important is, what do you tune out, right? For what's relevant for those customers, that's ultimately going to drive the conversions and the adoptions and everything else. And I'll give one example from a financial services vantage point, because that's where we play mostly at FIS, is mobile banking, which has been around for quite some time, is having a resurgence. because when you embed commerce and other payments capabilities and loyalty capabilities, I'll go as far as even wearables, IoT dashboard controls, where you're doing card level controls of what your smart refrigerator actually can spend, right? You don't want your kid to actually tell the refrigerator that they want all that chocolate pudding, because there's been some headlines out there about hundreds of dollars worth of chocolate pudding showing up via Instacart at the front door. But right, you know, if you think about the contextual relevancy of all of that within that app, where I actually can control the spending limits that's on that prepaid card on file for that smart device. You know, maybe where I'm going to enable my watch to make purchases and on what goods and services, and what other connected services, maybe even transportation, mind you, that you can bring into all of that, where versus adding 12 apps for all of those different jobs, you can package it in a contextual experience for me, one place. And what we're seeing is that's power. That's power when you're able to drive to that type of connected experience.
Yeah, so one more point to that, and I'll get back to you. I think there are very few apps that have the luxury that the banking apps have. You know, if your app has that luxury of presence, don't stop with whatever your context of your app is, right? So I was talking to a credit union down south, and they were talking about, like, you know, how can I help my members to probably manage the parking, and how can I engage in their lifestyle? How can I engage in the life moments? And how can I participate in those life moments, right? So things like that are totally beyond what typically a bank would do, but I think are important for the customer, right, in their life moments. And the point is that the 300 other apps that was doing that has lost relevance for the customer already. They have only those 7 or 8 apps that they have in their mind, more your mail, your calendar, your banking application, maybe your Starbucks app, your you know, whatever those 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 apps are. If you happen to be one of those 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 apps, take advantage of that. You know, get into the life, make their life better, be part of their life, and you can drive a lot more engagement.
Well, and that's ultimately, it's a convenience factor, right? That's what we're trying to drive to. Quality of life, ease of doing business, whatever it might be. We're running a little short on time, so the last topic we had is what's the future? What's the big thing you should be thinking about that's 3 years down the road? So I'm going to ask you each to say one thing, and then we're going to go to questions. So why don't we just start, Craig, why don't you start down at that end? Oh boy. One thing. I know that's hard.
I would have to say it's AI, because it's one of the enabling technologies, regardless of what form factor of device. I think it's going to be a very common service, not only for mobile, but for enterprise and infrastructure and machine to machine. It's the way things get processed. It could be IoT. It's huge, and I'm sure you're seeing all the big players there. I think the big differentiator that you're going to see between all the different vendors is going to be really having that creative design thinking mentality to make sure that the technology is not for the chosen few, it's really for everybody. And looking at some of the new tools that are coming out from various vendors, including Microsoft, what you're going to start seeing as a trend is you don't need a data scientist to do something and create a machine learning model and put it on your phone, put it on your website, put it on your whatever embedded device. So,
One thing, right?
1.25 if you talk quickly.
There we go. I'm going to say the one thing is voice, and I'll paint an image for you. Sunday afternoon, my personal electronic assistant knows that it's time to plan that summer vacation, knows our history in terms of loving the beach, certain views, certain restaurants, knows the balance of my loyalty points, where I have status, what my best travel options are to get there, and presents that to me in such a way where all I have to say is yes. And so from that contextual experience that we're talking about earlier, I'll make a quick connection point. It's a lot like real estate, right? It's location, location, location. And it's where's the traffic? Where are the customers spending most of their time doing those jobs where we can connect those things to save them time and make it so easy that from a voice perspective, I don't need to sort through my options. It's presented to me based on my best interests, based on data I'm willing to share, and all I have to say is yes.
From a B2B standpoint, I'm actually going to consolidate these. That voice-enabled glasses are going to transform almost everybody's job, because that's a combination of voice, mobile, computer. I could be sitting up here with glasses, it's listening to this, it searches Google, it gives me a better answer than the one I just gave. Like, that is I think, ultimately going to be, lots of people who in B2B are doing things with their hands. They need access to information, they need to connect with people. I think glasses are going to dominate.
Two mics. So I think all of those are valid ones, really. I think it's tough to be the last one to predict the future when all the cool stuff they have to. I think all of that is valid. I think the main point around all of that is personalization, really. I think that's the essence of the future. Don't take me to a website which says the same thing to 10,000 other people. Take me to a place where it'll tell me what I want from you, right? And make it a point-to-point interaction, really. So I think that and blending that into some kind of a conversational mechanics is probably where it will, where the future will land. At least that's sort of my thinking.
Yeah, I think that was a great summary, guys. I like where that landed. It's something that I believe is true. I hadn't thought about glasses. One of my cohorts has always got his glasses on his head. He's standing in the back. Now I know why he's got glasses. He's our innovation officer, so he's out there already. That's why he always has quick answers. So let's just go ahead and shift into questions then. We've got some good ones, and we've got some popular ones. So I'm just going to kind of start here at the top and see where we go from there. 45 to 50 million people in the U.S. don't have or use credit or debit cards. How are they going to take advantage of the mobile commerce wave? Financial guy, you want to start with this? Either one of you?
Yeah, sure. I think banking for the unbanked or the underbanked is a big initiative. Next week is Money 2020. Visa is running a big hackathon around that specific topic. It's a very interesting problem. It's a hard problem to solve, but it is actually mobile is a real boon in that front, right? Actually, if you look at it, 5 years ago in Kenya, and this is like I'm going like somewhere else outside the U.S., right? But Kenya had this mobile credits called M-Pesas. Okay, so it's prepaid mobile phones, really, with mobile credits on it. It was so popular that people started using that as currency. They were basically, you get into a taxi, it drives you to a distance, and it says, okay, fine, I have to pay him. I don't pay him cash. I transfer credits from me to him. So 90% of Kenya moved from using actual currency to M-Pesas, right? So now suddenly you have a universal e-currency system in place. Now many countries are moving in this direction, right? Cash-free economy is like a big deal now, right? And I think mobile is a big aspect around that cash-free economy, right? So it's like whether cash will completely go away is TBD. Whether banking will completely go away is probably TBD as well. but they'll definitely change, right? That's definitely change, both in order to include the underbanked and just deliver a lot of convenience across the board to be able to drive better commerce and better interaction, really.
I just, briefly echo one thing. There's, I talked a little bit about the resurgence of mobile banking. There's a big resurgence in prepaid. Talked a lot this session about, that now and next customer, those statistics that continue to grow, that digital first generation millennials. In many cases, they prefer prepaid. And the reason that they do is because they're coming off of the experiences of their parents with the last big recession and the experiences associated with that. They don't want to mess with it. So it's getting to that deeper understanding of the behaviors and what drives those behaviors and those types of things, because a lot of the statistics, what we're finding is underbanked is not because they can't get credit. Underbanked is by choice. Yeah. And they choose to spend and save through prepaid and others. Apple Pay, how many use it? It's built on prepaid, right? What's so great about the design of that user experience is because that shouldn't matter. And that's what's great about the design. But ultimately, in a P2P, perspective, when I'm going iPhone to iPhone to charge, that's what it is, right? And so more user driven in terms of that, but more of an opportunity, I would say, than a challenge in terms of the underbanked.
Yeah. A lot of people forget about PayPal these days, but they addressed that a long time ago in their own way.
Yeah.
So now I have a question specifically for Michael, but other people, maybe have commentary, but I think this is an appropriate one. Do customers who are doing major renovations on roads, buildings, whatever it might be, place their orders to HD Supply through their mobile devices? What are you seeing in that area?
So we actually sold a number of divisions, so I'll just bring it back to like our facilities maintenance division. And what we found, so they definitely, mobile revenue for us is, we're public, so I can't give the number, but it's double-digit growth. But in B2B, you have to connect. It comes down to your attribution. What things are they doing on mobile? There's a whole bunch of people never check out on mobile. And they call it in, they've got to get a PO number. So that's why you need to be very detailed about understanding the customer experience. What are they doing? Some people only ever go to order history and rebuy stuff. So in B2B, there's lots of repurchases. So this is where I think and it's been brought up before. Forget the philosophy. What are the data telling you? What is the task they're trying to accomplish? And so I think that's,
yeah, fair enough. Next question, and I'm not, anybody can field this. What is the current percentage of payments via mobile devices, and where do you see that going in the future? Anybody have that number at the tip
I
of
don't
their
have
hands?
a number. It's growing rapidly, but it's also a tough market to penetrate. And I was telling this earlier to somebody. It's one of those areas that is. I think people have to spend money from their pocket, and they're a lot more careful, a lot more conservative about it than in many other things that they would do, I suppose. I don't know what the real reason is, but the behavioral change from using just card or cash to pure mobile-based payment, it's definitely happening, and it's definitely growing rapidly, right? The little kids, all of them want to talk in Venmo. They don't want to talk about, Venmo me some money, right? That's all they care about, really. And but then at the same time, they don't, the wholesale transition to the payments is still has a lot of gaps still that needs to be closed.
I have a few I can share if you guys are interested. I brought some stats. I hope I don't bore you with these. I'm a data junkie in this way. I talked a little bit about Apple Pay, that whole theme around invisible payments. These still strike me. Transaction volume is growing at 500% year over year. 2 million small businesses are now accepting invoice payments with the service. 2 years, Apple has managed to move from 4 to 35% of retailers, or 4 million locations that are supporting Apple Pay in the US. Not where we want to be, ideally, of course, but those are pretty strong growth statistics that indicate a preference for that. Here's one from Zelle, because I'm a big believer actually in the potential for faster payments. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. In the fourth quarter alone of 2017, Bank of America alone handled more than 23 million Zelle transactions, totaling nearly $7 billion, which was up 91% from the fourth quarter of 2016. So, the statistics indicate that not just comfort, but preference for increasingly going mobile for commerce and for payments and for moving money even between people, and that one from the P2P standpoint of the commercial uses, which I think, for those of you guys out there following the trend on the third rail with the clearinghouse and other parties for faster payments, what we're seeing is a lot of the out-of-the-gate use cases are commercial in nature. There's almost a revisit to COD. You guys remember the cash-on delivery? Yeah. That's starting to be used now, right? I'm not getting my beer out of my truck and putting it in your store until I get my money transfer. And that's happening in milliseconds now. And that's a really good use, we think, of technology that can really start to drive actually one of the hurdles that we're finding now, and that's the economics, right? The economics models that are emerging are new. And so what we're working with a lot of our clients on is we have to start thinking and acting beyond the traditional business and economics models of interchange. It's not that interchange goes away, but how do we think about the economics of what are the success factors? What are the success metrics, economically speaking, that could be different when you talk about these different type of settlement opportunities? So, exciting times.
Great, thank you guys, great answers. Another one kind of going a little bit toward you, Michael, but I think everybody will have an opinion on this. I certainly have a little bit of one I'll mention. Talk a little bit about what B2B users are asking that is different than B2C users as it relates to a seamless mobile experience.
Yeah. Some of these are timeless, so I can't spend $10 million on my own. That has to be approved by somebody, so workflow is a really big deal. Access to information, it depends on your industry, but in our space, people are mobile. If you think about, we sell to multifamily housing, one of the key insights we've had is that maintenance people don't want to be yelled at. So you live in an apartment, something broke, you're mad, maintenance guy's in front of you, he needs to be able to answer, when is it coming, et cetera. So it's, actually kind of lost my train of thought there on the question. What was the question?
You're answering it great.
Okay, wow.
No, the difference between B2B and B2C.
Yeah, and and B2C is, it's very experiential, it's contextual. B2B, they have, 2 to 10 top use cases, and if you knock those out of the park, there's all kinds of things that just don't matter. They don't need to read terms of service, and just understanding that. I think what's interesting too is how do you personalize the user interface in the menus. It's actually pretty, in some ways, very rudimentary, but just delivering personalized interfaces for B2B folks. And then also making it very, this is what I dislike to some extent about AI and data. I'm me until I'm not me. There's times, this is who I am, this is my preference, and then I was just in 2 weeks in Steamboat Springs. My preferences in Steamboat Springs on vacation are different they are Atlanta when I'm at home.
For sure.
So I don't have a good solution to that, but there's got to be some way for me to unbecome me and to tell you I don't want to be me right now.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw a couple things out from my experience. I think it's really important that you offer more self-service capabilities in B2B than it is in B2C. And that can be really basic stuff like checking your order history, checking the status of an invoice, checking the status of an order. But the things that are really critical today, and you hit on it a little bit, are availability. I want to know if this thing's available now, and if it's not, where can I order it? What other warehouse might have it? So we have to expose a lot more information than you would ever give somebody in B2C. You don't care where it's coming from. Well, I might, because I don't want to pay the extra $500 to have it shipped here tomorrow from a different warehouse. So all the information they want real time in their fingertips. The other thing that sounds kind of silly, but it's super important, is customers have their own part numbers. They don't want your part number. They want to be able to search and access information on their information, not yours. So you've got another data layer that starts to be involved. And this is true on mobile, it's true on desktop, but mobile's super critical because you have a little bit of real estate here, and I want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. The other thing we're seeing, people are starting to think about voice. You know, to your point earlier, eyeglasses. I don't want to type. I'm a fumble fingers. You know, order me this. Now, is it available? Great. Place the order. Route that to the person who can actually approve it. So the experience is really accelerated, and it's through data transparency and data availability, I think.
One 10-second add to that is that no matter how good your mobile app is, not every customer is going to use it. They're going to buy someplace else. So having an integration strategy, like I want 100% of the share of wallet, so wherever they buy, I want to be there. And I think that requires companies to not sell what they make, but sell what customers are buying and get into spaces that they've not traditionally been good at. And it's almost certainly technology, like adding value to that customer journey in places you traditionally haven't.
And I'll give you one example that was rolled out actually in the holidays just last year. Walmart app. One of the things that they built in actually was expedited returns. So not just a checkout, but how painful is it to try to return something around the holidays and stand in those lines, right? So one of the ways that they actually integrated mobile into improving an experience, and it goes back to those jobs that we're trying to solve for, save me time, right? They went from something, I think, on average of a 40-minute wait for a return to something that was less than 4 minutes. That's huge. I mean, that's huge time savings, right? So we've talked a lot about the commerce angle and purchasing and everything else, but I think from a mobile commerce perspective, what are other angles, right? What are those other jobs that connected? Because what that is that's a mobile in-store connected experience is what they've done. Yep. Right, and really, really powerful. And, you know, the stickiness aspect of what they've built into that app, which is I'm going to use that more, that I can then bolt on more experiences that are going to draw me into that save me time.
Okay, we're down to the wire here. We've got a couple more questions. This one may be a little too broad, but if anybody wants to tackle this quickly. If you're a small business with minimal infrastructure, how do you appeal to that generation that wanted their order yesterday?
I'll go with one. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it feels relevant to the question of a repeat, and that is a little bit of that that idea of real estate, location, location, location. Where can I be where the volumes and the audience is? Do I need to necessarily go it alone, right? I had shared a little bit earlier, even from FIS's perspective, when we do an evaluation of build, buy, or partner to do these, that we are increasingly looking for partners. In my role, and you mentioned Money 2020 next week, which we'll go to Vegas for this, but I'm going to be tired after because my calendar is literally stacked from sun up to sundown with potential vendor partner meetings where we are spending time together figuring out how their technology, their solution could fit into a contextual journey that we are delivering through some of our solutions, which could be mobile banking, which could be our merchant hub, which could be other solutions, right? So I say welcome to what small companies might be doing. I think the guidance or recommendation I would be is don't think you have to or try to go and own it alone. It's something that we're actually spending even a lot of times with our financial institutions where many of them will say, well, we can't do that because we're regulated. BS. That argument used to exist a while ago, but one of the great things about the fintechs, many maybe in this room, is that they've demonstrated with a different mindset, there's a lot you can do that you don't have to say no to. And so I give that out there because I think they've kind of thought we have to be both the manufacturers and the distributors of all of the products and services that we bring to our customers. Therefore, we can't get to that. I'd say no. You can absolutely get to that, and you can get speed to market, and you can get some rapid tests if you embrace a different mindset. And so to kind of circle around to the small businesses, I think that there are companies that are embracing partnership opportunities and think of it as that real estate of location, 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 where the customers already are and where they're spending their time. That represents an opportunity to get your product to them.
Well, I think that wraps up our time here. I can see